In search of sanity. Hello, thanks for once again allowing LilyBell to take you beneath the crust, where I talk about what you're afraid to think about. I'm so glad you're back. Great for rising. Mount Rushmore. This is from my series. Did you know? I'm going to be reading from 2 web pages, and I'm going to also be giving my input. The first web page, Mount Rushmore, Native Americans Burial Ground. Search. I'll put the links in the description. Reading. Mount Rushmore National Memorial was built on sacred Native American land and was sculptured by a man with ties to the Ku Klux Klan. It was met with outrage when it was completed in October 31st, 1941. In 1970, Native Americans protested the monument by ascending to the top of Mount Rushmore and setting up camp. The battle, and battles in quotation marks, the battle was actually a massacre where hundreds of Native Americans were killed. Creation of Mount Rushmore is a story of struggle, and to some, desecration. Now I'm reading from the PBS.org, and as I say it, I'll be putting in the link. Reading. The Black Hills are sacred to the Lakota Sioux, the original occupants of the area where white settlers arrived. For some, the 4 presidents carved in the hill are not without negative symbolism. The Sioux have never had much luck dealing with white men. In the Treaty of 1868, the U.S. government promised the Sioux territory that included the Black Hills in perpetuity. Perpetuity lasted only until gold was found in the mountains and prospectors migrated there in the 1870s. The federal government then forced the Sioux to relinquish the Black Hills portion of their reservation. This is my input. The Lakota Sioux already owned the area where the Black Hills were. They owned them when the European settlers arrived there. The Lakota Sioux already owned the Black Hills, as well as the land around the Black Hills. The European settlers decided they wanted a part of the Lakota Sioux land, so this is what they did. The European settlers pushed the Lakota Sioux over onto a small portion of the Lakota Sioux land. The Black Hills were a part of the land that the European settlers forced the Lakota Sioux on. Now I'm back to the PBS article. These events, my insertion, the events of signing treaties and not honoring them. Back to the article. These events fit the pattern of the 19th century, a time of nearly constant conflict between the American government and Plains Indians. At his second presidential inauguration in 1873, Ulysses S. Grant reflected the attitudes of many whites when he said he favored a humane course to bring Native Americans under the benign influence of education and civilization. My input. Notice this. Humane, this is what Ulysses S. Grant said. Humane, benign, education, and civilization. My input. Back to reading. It is either this or war. Now, my input again. He's saying that either they're going to do what we want to do. The Sioux going to do what we want to do. It's going to be war or extermination, war of extermination. Many of the land original occupants did not choose to assimilate. For them, war was the only option. My input. Who was it that said, give me liberty or give me death? Well, it appears the Lakota Sioux was saying that as well. Back to the article. Furthermore of my input. Here you have the President of the United States of America saying that although this land with the Black Hills rightfully belonged to the Lakota Sioux, if they, the Lakota Sioux, don't give the European settlers the part of the land that the European settlers want, the European settlers will go to war on the Lakota Sioux. Back to the article, PBS article. In South Dakota, Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse led various Sioux tribes against the U.S. Army. They had a notable success against General George Armstrong Custer and his troops, but the Army's defeat at the Battle of Little Bighorn in America's centennial year, 1876, would cause the federal government to redouble its efforts. Some of the area in which Rushmore stands was eventually purchased by the state of South Dakota and developed as Custer State Park. The rest was part of the Black Hills National forests. South Dakota was also the site of the last major defeat of Native Americans at the Battle of Wounded Knee in 1890. In his best-selling 1970 History of Native Americans' Experiences in the West, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, D. Bryan explained that the battle was actually a massacre. Here again, battle is in quotation marks. Explained that the battle was actually a massacre where hundreds of unarmed Sioux women, children, and men were shot and killed by U.S. troops. The history of Wounded Knee will spur American Indian Movement, AIM, activists to occupy the site in 1973. They demanded the federal government honor the treaties made with various tribes. The FBI became involved in what was known as the Second Siege at Wounded Knee. And a tense standoff resulted in the death of 2 Native Americans and injury to others on both sides. Violence continued to erupt for several years, including a June 26, 1975 firefight on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota that ended with the death of 2 FBI agents and 1 Native American. In a case that continues to spur controversy, AIM member Leonard Peltier was convicted of killing the FBI agents and sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences in prison. This is my input. It appears there wasn't anyone held accountable for the death of the Native American. Back to PBS article. In 1927, with the history of turmoil as a background, a white man living in Connecticut came into the Black Hills and dynamited and drilled the faces of 4 white men on Mount Rushmore. At the onset of the project, I'm probably going to mispronounce this name, no disrespect intended, Gutzon Borglum had persuaded South Dakota state historian Doane Robertson the president would give the work national significance, rejecting Robertson of the project. It was desired by some that both the Native Americans and the pioneers were honored, but that didn't happen. Back to the article. The insult of Rushmore to some Sioux is at least threefold. 1, it was built on land the government took from them. Number 2, the Black Hills in particular are considered sacred ground. Number 3, the monument celebrates the European settlers who killed so many Native Americans and appropriated their land. To counter the white faces of Rushmore, in 1939, Sioux Chief Henry Standing Bear invited Kozak Zilokowski, who worked briefly at Rushmore, to carve a memorial to the Sioux Nation in the Black Hills. Perhaps weary of Borglum's troubles with financial administrators, Zilokowski personally bought a mountaintop with a granite ridge and financed the entire project private. The statue, envisioned as a freestanding sculpture of the great Sioux chief Crazy Horse, will be much larger than any other Rushmore figures. Kozak Zilowski, see it put 3 times I said the name and 3 times I mispronounced it. Kozak Zilowski died in 1982, but his family continues to work in the awesome undertaking. Crazy Horse's face was completed and dedicated in 1998. Although the subject of this work addresses one aspect of Rushmore's offenses, the land is still considered Sioux property, and the mountain that the Zilowskis are carving is still sacred. The Crazy Horse Monument is not without its own dissent and critics. Subscribe, comment, like, and share. Support our youth. Reach out to the young brother who dropped the beats, Spacemanfalcon at gmail.com. Support our youth in any way you can. Keep on churning till the butter comes. Albert C. Richardson, a black man, patent the butter churn U.S. patent number 446470, February 17th, 1891. I'm LilyBell. I'm just trying to create a dialogue. I leave you with this. If they close my book, you remember my story. European settlers, you desecrated the Lakota Sioux sacred ground. Why did you do it? A Nat Turner Runner production. Lock and load. LilyBell. Be encouraged.